Over to Mr. Sundaresan, and subsequently you can always take the questions from the audience also. Over to you, Mr.
Questions are pouring in actually. Don't worry, Vijay, I'll keep you engaged. Okay. Now, I was reserving the best question for you because these are sensitive, which I could not ask the previous four speakers. IL&FS is the biggest tragedy in this country. There was supposed to be a risk management committee. Sorry, there was. That comprised of R.C. Bhargav, Michael Pinto. He kept on asking Pinto ko gussa kyun aata hai, and then Arun Saha, and then Bandopadhyay, who is LIC nominee. Trust me, all four are big in their own. It is said that during the crisis period, which is 2015, this risk management committee met only once. When I asked the directors why they did not meet, they said, no, we were never called for. A meeting was never called for. I mean, that on a lighter side. But when it comes to an auditor, where were you? I mean, you means whoever was auditor. I mean, how could somebody not take this risk management committee seriously as an auditor? So what is your perception?
Well, I don't think I want to comment specifically on IL&FS, but I can tell you that today, the seriousness with which SEBI is driving it, with which the regulators are driving it, I think there is enough seriousness today in many companies. And I can still tell you that while it is recommendatory for companies, we should actually make it mandatory. And the sad part of it, Mr. Sundaresan, is this, that we only drive when the law drives us. And there is a strong need for the lawmakers to listen today that there should be more regulation on the risk committee. Having said that, I can still tell you that many listed companies today don't have a framework.
Yeah.
And sorry to say this, but the responsibility has to be shared amongst the stakeholders. It has to be the board, it has to be the auditors, it has to be the internal auditors, it has to be everybody who has to take ultimate responsibility in terms of driving this culture.
But Vijay, one small, sorry to, many times I come across people saying, hey, there is an audit committee, why should I bother about a risk committee? So this is the question I tried to pose in the beginning also. So do you think this is like an escape route or something like that where, or like that Jaspal Bhatti, committee go for committee, so, or it's a mockery that we are having too many committees. Do you think there is a clear demarcation between a risk committee and an audit committee?
So very, very clearly. Actually, I wanted to, come in there when this question was asked. I see a significant difference between an audit committee and a risk committee. There are many topics outside of the financial risk which are being discussed in the risk committees. Let's take examples of disruption. I think Mr. Menon spoke about free cash flows, right? These are the points which the risk committee has to take note of. And this is where I think the risk committees feed in very well into the audit committee and into the board, actually asking them to drive the right way. And I sincerely feel the roles are very, very different. And there is a desperate need that the risk committees actually take serious action.
Yeah, on that note, I think what you said is brilliant because Nestle, I believe the Maggie related issue was handled by the risk committee and not the audit committee.
You're perfectly right. You're perfectly right.
So this is a clear demarcation. That's what I want to drive home the point because last 2.5 hours, we have been deliberating on what this risk committee is all about. So thank you for clarifying that. Now, let me just go to the questions. Mani is asking, how are emerging topics like bribery and corruption, conflict of interest discussed within management teams and in risk committees?
Oh, I think Mani, very, very good point. And I know you're a champion in this. Today, I can tell you, JS, that many companies are looking at ethics and compliance very, very differently. You've seen the DOJ, the SEC taking strict action in many places on bribery and corruption. Today, if you look at industries, there are many industries today where the practices are very different. And I think there's a desperate need to have an overall framework for ethics and compliance, and it should be as serious as the ERM, if not lesser. And the risk committee actually should own the culture of ethics and compliance.
Correct. I think the charter itself should be different, right? I mean, audit committee deals with certain related party and financials and all that, and risk should take care of all this bribery, anti-corruption, crisis management. I think the risk management committee's role is huge, and it's such a sad thing that only now we have come to the 1,000 listed companies. We have 7,000 listed companies and about close to 10,000 large public companies, actually. I mean, it's a long way to go, but I think
Jayesh, you'll be surprised that there is a UK code of conduct which is being released on corporate governance in 2019, and they said that the board chairman should actually drive culture.
Okay, that's a very good point, actually. Yeah. In fact, what I do is I call myself ECG specialist. Nothing to do ethics, compliance, and governance. But three emerging issues are environment, culture, geopolitical. I think a lot of discussions happened around culture and social this thing, but environment, I think you covered it a little bit, which is going to be a huge thing, right? I mean, climate is going to become a big thing. How do you think ESG will pan out?
Well, today, if you look at investments are happening in clean companies. They're talking about what is the strategy. So I can tell you that today several companies are approaching us, asking us as to what they should be doing on ESG. While I can tell you many companies are actually doing a lot, but do they have a clear strategy? Are they communicating it the right way? And are they measuring themselves in the right parameters? It's very easy to say we'll get carbon neutral by XYZ date, but what is the plan to get there? So today, a lot of investors are asking a question saying, you made this statement, can you tell us what is it that you're doing to get there? So I think there is a serious need. I will not be surprised that 5 years from now, investments will happen in companies who have a clear map on ESG.
Super. In fact, that's a precursor, or I would say trailer for our next session, actually, which is going to happen on ESG. Thanks for that. Now, Pramit asks you a question, which is, what are your thoughts on climate change as one of the emerging risks and the kind of repercussions it could bring to the business? Should we act now or watch closely? Could this risk be converted to an opportunity?
Oh, yes. Today, a lot of companies are actually looking at this very, very carefully and assessing what opportunities lie in them. So there are many industries today, many sectors today who are looking at it very, very differently. Just look at companies which are in the renewables. There is a clear runway for them as we move along. And as I think countries sign up to this climate change, which is coming up, I think there is immense opportunity out there for companies. So just look at how many companies have set up captives on solar. And that's the way I think it's going.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the end thing. Actually, solar is becoming a big one. In fact, IOD had done a program just 2 days back. UP government and Andhra Pradesh government has just opened their doors for anything that you talk on solar. So I think, yeah, that's something that we need to look up. Margaret is asking, what is the mitigation step for managing the talent risk, which you covered, where the companies have given in for candidates window shopping?
Yeah. See, a lot of companies, mostly in the ITES, are today facing a big risk. We consulting firms are facing a big risk. And the way we are addressing talent, I can tell you, is trying to assess, one, how do we retain people? Okay, money is just one part of it. Compensation is just one part of it. Talent management, talent retention is a very, very broad and big topic. Today, we have to look at it from a very, very different perspective on ensuring the top talent is retained, but also reskilled and upskilled. And today, I can tell you, I think there was also one speaker who spoke about connecting with people, right? With this pandemic, there's absolutely no connection between the employees. And today, this could be one of the big reasons people are leaving. So not an easy answer. I don't think I can answer it within few sentences, but this is a big risk for companies.
Yeah, so I think talent risk is a big risk, which should go as one of the agenda items in a risk management committee, I feel, that's
yes.
one of the tick the box, actually. Bhaskara is asking in life sciences, pharma industry, continuous manufacturing technologies, adapting companies have strong competitiveness. Now the question is, how do they cope up with the delivery speed risk with their competitors? What measures do KPMG proposes? Maybe you could take that offline and bill him actually.
Yes, I can surely recommend offline, but I can tell you today there are many, many new technologies which have come to ensure that supply chain management is no longer an issue that was there 5 years ago or 2 years ago. You'll be surprised that once you interact with these new startups, the way they have actually addressed these issues. There are many companies today, much smaller in size, but they've actually resolved big problems for supply chain.
I think there are a lot of good questions coming in. Rajiv ji, do I have
Yes,
another
sir.
three? The nation wants to know. Do I have 3 more minutes of?
Yes, yes, yes. Please go ahead. Please
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you so much. There's so many. Money is asking. In most of the examples of impropriety, the management override is responsible. Can RM program really control that? Amazing.
Again, two things. One is tone at the top is very, very important. I'm sure everyone over here understands how important the tone at the top is. This is a risk not only for the CRO, but this is a risk for the auditor. This is a risk for the CFO, and something very clearly that while it's not easy to address it, but the structure in which and the authority with which the CRO operates is very, very important. There has to be a clear line of communication between the CRO and the chair of the board. And I'm actually saying this very particularly saying the chair of the board. Because if there are cultural issues, it is up to the board chairman to address them.
So you are casting the onus on the chairman. Okay. Okay. Now let me
and yes, today you know that there is also a directive that the executive and the board chair should be different, right? So there is enough corporate governance in terms of policies that are coming in that direction.
Okay. Ravi, I think 2 people had put their hands up. Can you just identify, maybe they want to speak in person, just identify. I'll ask, meanwhile, I'll ask a question to Vijay. I can't leave this opportunity, Vijay. Yeah. So what is the auditor's role in identifying risk? Should the auditor be dependent on the management to expose risk?
Well, today there are sufficient tools that are used in audit. Well, you can see this clear role definition is there as to what an auditor should do, can do, and should not do. It's not the auditor's job to run behind identifying risks, but it is the auditor's job to ensure that there is enough framework in place and controls in place to identify, assess, and address the risk. And it is, I think, the auditor's role today to making sure that those controls are effectively working. And if there is a breach, again, there is a need for the auditor to respond to it appropriately.
Beautiful. Okay. So now, before I move on to the other panelists with one last question, one question to you for the larger interest of the audience. Going concern, business continuity, and gone concern. Gone concern, though you know it's gone. So between these two, what is the difference that a board member should be aware of sitting in a risk management committee?
Well, a going concern is a much broader risk in the sense where the company needs to ensure how it's going to end in terms of ensuring that the stakeholders who are involved are also aware of this risk of going concern, right? So I'm saying that's a stakeholder management, that's a communication, that's a far, far bigger risk to be addressed. In terms of business continuity, I think Mr. Menon also mentioned that there can be ways to mitigate that, right? Short-term funding, making sure that there are controls in place to ensuring that not one location can pose a bigger risk, there are ways of mitigating business continuity. But going concern, gone concern is a far bigger risk for the board to handle. And it's a very delicate topic in terms of how that is communicated.
Oh, that was very clear. Yeah. So because this is in connection with Jet Airways, okay? I mean, where if you're sitting on the board as an independent director of Jet Airways, I mean, the board did not see, auditor did not see, only the promoter saw it. He went to the balcony and said, from tomorrow, my company is shut down. I mean, that's the biggest unknown. In fact, that's what Mr. Akshay, I had started off this session with. And if you permit, I will just pick that question somebody has asked on Cafe Coffee Day Siddharth. Okay, the beautiful question that comes, which is that unknown is, the question is, how do you sitting inside a risk management committee see it coming? So let me start with Ganesh. A Cafe Coffee Day scenario and you are on the risk management committee, how do you see it coming? Just short, a very brief answer.
No, I think if you are focused on looking at risks over a longitudinal period of time, you can see trends. I mean, there will be weaknesses in some aspects. So I think you just have to have a risk management framework which tracks and are able to identify potential risks much before they become a disaster. So I think that's very important. Some things like the Satyam case which are very difficult to spot early, but I mean there will be
this is another unknown, which is Siddharth just decided to go and take a dip in a river and never came out of it. So as board members, we need to be very, very cautious, right? I mean, that's the biggest risk that many boards are facing, where the uncertainty of the CEO itself, existence of the CEO.
No, sir, for that succession planning is essential. So if you don't have a second line, it's never going to happen.
No, that was the answer. Yeah. So Bhargav, what is your take? I mean, as an insurer, a Cafe Coffee Day, suddenly the CEO disappears. Forget the insurance part of it. I'm only asking about the business continuity part.
No, I think Ganesh responded. I mean, at a board level, you have to think about succession planning. Again, not practiced well across the industry, but it's vital. You have to think about someone being hit by the bus. And I think the other point that Vijay also made in terms of the tone from the top, a lot of that element is missing. A lot of times we follow checklist approach, right? I mean, and in some of these examples that you're giving, even Satyam, right? So all the checklists, if you look at the quality of board, everything was ticked. But if the message from the top is being managed, it is almost also very difficult for the board to figure that out.
Yeah, I'll give you a tip also.
Yeah, and in a sense, knowing who the leader is very important, and his values.
Yeah, so
her values.
This is what I call third eye awakening. All of it should get. Yeah. So before we close, Mr. Menon, you listed out so many risks. Now, climate risk is one of the, which of course Vijay dealt it so beautifully. That's the biggest risk that I see for tourism. Now, what do you, as a person running the company, how do you handle that risk?
So I think one major advantage we have is that our business is very seasonal. So we try and, within those seasonalities, try and address the issues that could potentially arise around these such risks. Let me give you an example. So for example, we send people on cruises out of Miami. And, there are parts of the year when there are tornadoes that are floating all around that area. We avoid those periods. Now, I'm not saying that we get it 100% right. Yeah. For example, when the Bahamas had its major tornado, we were very lucky that it didn't hit the main island where we had tourists at the time, but it hit another island which we never happened to visit. But very often we are able to use seasonality to our advantage. Not all the time, but for a good portion of the time. So climate risk is something that we look at very closely when we build our products.
Thank you so much. All of you were wonderful. And want of time, I still have so many questions, but this can go on through the night actually. So thanks, and over to you, Rajiv. Thank you so much.